Chapter 12. I did it again! Caleb stumbled into a tree and smashed his fist into it. I left them! I left people to die again! Dried leaves tumbled onto his head from above. Around them, the forest remained quiet. He saw it again. His parents remaining behind in the garden. Kelin and Dare vanishing into the manor. Over and over. But, my prince, the elf from Count Calloway's service pleaded. You survived. Caleb rounded on him. They were my friends, so here. They were my friends. I stood with them and I didn't run from Senna's lot, but at the suspicion of Kelin I crumbled. He pawed at his face. Part of him was trying to convince himself that he hadn't known them long enough for them to be trusted companions. But he'd been through more with them than anyone else he could call friend. The dark-haired Sohair faltered to a stop. He had dropped his mortal disguise, and now he was tall and thin. My prince, but what? I betrayed them. I betrayed my friends and my parents. He fell to his knees. All of this was too much, too fast. Part of him continued to deny the reality of it and demanded he wake up. Yet every morning he did rise, and everything still had happened. And he had run away. Again. The other elf bowed and continued to hold himself low as he spoke. We feared terribly for you. The prince doubled forward, nearly resting his forehead on the dirt. Don't you know what will become of my friends? They could be in Darkreign. Sohair knelt beside him. I regret what you have suffered, but we do not have the time to spare. Let them go. Release them from your mind. No one returns from Darkreign. Caleb stared at the soil and leaves as his vision blurred. Not even those who were banished there? Because history has lied to us. Tears bled from his eyes. I left them behind, in the hands that murdered my parents. I'm wicked. You are not, Sohair whispered. Caleb slouched. Yes, I am. He hammered a hand against the forest floor. All I've done is left good people to die. Sohair hesitated. Like you, I am unaccustomed to understanding such desperation. I fear that we have long forgotten how to consider it. He gazed up at the overcast sky. But may I say this? Make their deaths be not in vain. You must live for all of them. You will take on the mantle of king. Caleb shook his head. I don't want it. I was never meant to have it. Sohair pulled the younger elf up by his shoulders. You are what is left of the king and queen. Do something to bring them justice. What about those who still live? What about your brother? Get away from me. Caleb flinched away, staring wildly at everything except Sohair. He grabbed his head in both hands. People had died. There would be no justice for that. Could he ever get used to this numbing sensation? He looked to the trees of the surrounding forest and listened to their autumn leaves crackle as they moved on their branches. He shivered as a blast of air flowed past him. Winter was teasing, dragging its icy fingers through the wind. Only a touch on the breeze, just enough to know it was on its way. He had always seen the world as falling asleep, resting for next year's bounties and blooms. But now all he could see was the world growing colder and the life being choked out of it. He wasn't sure if spring would ever come. He gulped. What about my brother? Have you any word of him? Sohair shook his head. Up, my prince. We must hurry. I have no illusion that they are far behind us. King Dis stood over the Kemen soldier's corpse. He flicked the body's stub of a truncated wrist that had healed over years ago. No change. And now this warrior was dead. Dis frowned. It still wasn't fair. This brave and faithful soldier had offered up his own body to be filled with the late elf king's blood to see if his hand would regrow like the elves could do naturally. He died in agony. Dis lifted the shortened arm and sighed loudly. Absolutely no change. What a waste of that smug king's corpse. Scowling, he left the room and climbed the moldy stairs to his borrowed throne room. He swept past Vlade, slouched back in the obsidian throne, and then looked at the Kelin commander, who was standing over a large table laden with maps. "You had him! You had the older prince!" Dis slapped his armrest. "And you give me 2 humans instead!" It wasn't the obsidian throne that rested in the heart of Darkreign, but a shrunken similarity he'd brought with him to this cramped, bog-smelling court of a long-dead minor king. Behind his throne was the obsidian mirror, and that was not a replica. The polished mirror over the black stone was one of the most important pieces of treasure the Kelin owned, and the king was never far from it. Dis caught Vlade glowering at him in the mirror. The commander's dark hair outlined his sharp features, all of which brought forth his orange eyes. They could have been brothers. And in a way, the king muttered to himself, they were. Vlade shrugged. "He is intelligent prey." Dis pressed his shoulders against the obsidian throne's back. "And?" The other Kelin closed his eyes and exhaled. "We almost had him twice, but the cultists failed in Dulingar, and those humans interfered with our trap in Second Akron." "He is intelligent, then, to throw the humans at us as his shield." The king clicked his fingernails on the armrest. Vlade glanced down to find that he too had been drumming his fingers against the table. He scowled. The Kelin pulled his hand away. Dis frowned. "Then you've learned nothing." The commander's reply was as sharp as a knife's edge. "There was nothing to learn." The king ground his teeth. "So, we have 2 humans who don't know anything, and the princes have escaped your grasp yet again. You, the elite. You, our hero who has planned this assault ever since our banishment, lost 2 boys. Your discipline is fading." Vlade sighed. "We have lost nothing, since we never had them in our possession. You should have gotten them all the first time." Vlade snapped. "The harder the fight, the better the victory." Dis snarled. "A sentiment shared by those who enjoy the hunt, not the meal. I prefer to know where and when the next meal is. When will you have the crown prince?" Vlade brushed some dust that drifted down from the ceiling off his sleeve. "I wasn't aware that you were planning to consume him." "You know what I meant." Dis rolled his eyes. The commander's insouciance was especially irksome at the moment. They'd had their total victory snatched away from them, and he didn't seem to care. The king dug for something to repay his annoyance. "Hero. That makes you a dangerous thing, Vlade, because you are too different from us." The commander raised an eyebrow. "As king, you are different too, as His Majesty is aware." "Not like you." Dis settled back into the throne. "You and I should never disagree. The Kelin have only one voice." "Yours, naturally," Vlade drawled. "No, we are one voice, except for maybe you." "And yet you are king. Your words are our words." Dis glowered. "You spent too much time chasing other races, Vlade. You've picked up disobedience from them." Vlade gave him the dry look of a man who knows exactly from whom the army takes its commands. "I do not suffer disobedience." "No, I just suffer you." Dis smiled coldly. "Because you are our hero." The other Kelin basked in his smirk. And what else? You know. The king's expression dropped to a scowl. There is nothing else. We do not keep secrets. Vlad took a single step forward, watching the king's eyes. Because I get your will done. I may not always follow your orders, but only because you don't know how to accomplish your dreams. I do. Dis curled his fingers around the edges of his throne with white knuckles. He turned away but ended up staring at the commander in the mirror. This is what you wanted too? How could you know? You've never asked me what I want. The sword, Vlad, I know. Dis relaxed. Our plans were sailing so well, too. We did it. We slew the hateful king and queen. A wistful, playful smile appeared. And after what those two did to us, yes, now we need to kill their offspring and the elven witch. Vlad shook his head. We need not hurry. The elves are suffering in disarray and despair. I never imagined that they could crumble and flee their kingdom so easily. Good. Dis rolled his orange eyes. But it made our task that much harder. The commander barked a laugh. And such a glorious sin it was for them abandoning their homes. But now they finally fear us like they should. The king waved his hand dismissively. Yes, I agree, of course, but we need the princes, Vlad. That was our plan. We can't kill their hope in front of all of them if it's not in our hands. He smirked. As we used to say, to win the war today, kill tomorrow. Vlad rolled his hand over the maps. Yes, that used to mean destroy the crops, water, livestock, and the children. Used to this. Used to. It still does. His smile spread. Hope, Vlad, because tomorrow is always about hope. I will not leave them at tomorrow. But you will leave me to accomplish that. As always. Vlad sighed. I have duties to attend to, my king. He turned and started to walk, but then glanced behind his shoulder. One odd thing. Why did you find it necessary to post a guard in the girl's cell? Did you think she was capable of suicide? Dis frowned. What do you mean? The torturer told me that the guard said your orders had been to make certain she didn't kill herself. But the king licked his lips. They used the chains. The magic doesn't allow them to do that. It only brings them to the edge of death. We can't question dead men. Those weren't your orders? Vlad raised his eyebrows. No. Yours? The commander shook his head. But I suppose it makes a sort of sense, with her surprising ancestry. He clicked his heel against the stone floor. Perhaps the guard misunderstood an order. Dis shook his head. Yes, probably. Odd, though.